Hey guys, and welcome back to Mad About Skin. In today's video, we are talking Dear Klairs, but we finally have the true SPF values of their now discontinued sunscreen products. So many of you guys have been reaching out asking if I had any information to share, which is why I wanted to sit down and film this video. If you remember back to like a year ago, the Dear Klairs sunscreen collection just disappeared. It was missing in action. They didn't really update us, the consumer, about what was going on because it was happening around the time of the Korean Sunscreen scandal and the issues with Purito. We assumed that it was to do with the SPF on that they were advertising not actually being delivered by the products, which is why they were taken from market. But they never actually denied or confirmed that, which left us kind of unsure as to whether to continue to use the products or what that meant for us as consumers. Now, we have finally got the true SPF values. Dear Klairs have actually done a whole suite of independent verification on their products and they released them and shared them today. So I'm going to talk you through what the exact figures are, but they only tell part of the story. I also want to take this further and talk about where this leaves Klairs as a brand, my thoughts and feelings, but also the implications for the wider industry. So if you want to find out the true SPF values of the Dear Klairs sunscreen collection, keep on watching. It seems whenever we talk about Korean sunscreens that we wait for ages and ages for an update, and then so many land all at once. Yesterday's video actually focused on 5 brands which recently passed their independent verification. I'm going to leave a link to that video up there, and I would definitely recommend you check that out if you're looking for an alternative to the Dear Klairs we're talking about today. But also, just to shed some light on, this isn't every single brand impacted in this way in Korea. There are some great Korean sunscreens still available on the market that are independently tested, tried and verified, and they're contained in that video. So check that out if you want some more information on that. But let's cut the waffle and delve straight into what you're all here for, which is the true SPF values. I'm going to start with the Dear Klairs UV Watery Essence because this was their best seller. I know so many of you guys were devastated when this was taken from the market. You also were reaching out saying, is it still safe to use? And because we didn't have any update from the brand, we really didn't know. Well, they've gone through independent verification and they did it at multiple sites. I think this is a really great way of testing sunscreens because obviously if you just test them in one country at one location, that can distort the results somewhat. So they've tested it at multiple locations and they've also done 4 independent tests on each of the products. I'm going to share with you a range of SPFs. This isn't something that's unique to Klairs. Most SPF testing results in a range. That's because there's margins of error in all scientific testing, and also because different tests in different locations will give a slightly different result. Anyway, let's talk about the SPF values for this. The Klairs UV Watery Essence resulted in an SPF value of between 12.4 and 25. In terms of the product, which was saying it delivered an SPF of 50 plus, this is less than half of what they were actually claiming the product delivered. I think this is almost worse than what maybe we were expecting. I think a lot of people expected it to fall below that SPF 50, but if you take the average of that, which is 18, that's actually below what triggered all of this, which was the Purito SPF value when all of this started. They also have a product called the Midday Blue UV Fluid. This was a newer launch from them, not one that I'd ever actually tried, but I do know it was still popular online. This actually resulted in an SPF result of 12.7 to 22. So the average for this one is actually below the UV Watery Essence we just discussed, and again, is quite shocking when taken into the context of what this product was promising, which was an SPF of 50 plus. They also have a blemish treatment and BB style cream, which also had an SPF in there, and that was promoted as being an SPF of 40. The independent testing actually showed the average SPF of this was 42, so we do have one product in this collection which did pass. The blemish treatment BB cream will be coming back onto the market, they've confirmed, in the next couple of weeks, but they are permanently discontinuing the Midday Blue Fluid and their Klairs UV Watery Essence. So those are the results, but I think, like I said before, they only tell half of the story. Kind of what are the thoughts and feelings on this? Well, first of all, I do want to applaud Klairs for being fully transparent and actually revealing the SPF testing data. I think this is something that we all expect. When we're coming from it from a Western perspective, we all expect this to just be the bare minimum. However, over in Korea, there are some very harsh anti-defamation laws in place, which means if you were to release these, you do open the risk to a whole suite of legal action. And so I think this is actually quite a brave move on the part of Klairs. This can't take away from the fact, though, that their sunscreens were offering far below what they advertised as a brand. This is is really disappointing because so many people reached for this sunscreen and were obviously using a product which wasn't giving them the right level of protection. This obviously has implications for people's health, people's well-being, and also the fact that they didn't really tell us anything for a full year was just that lack of transparency meant that people were reaching out wondering whether they were using a substandard product, whether they could continue to use a product they'd invested their hard-earned coin in, and it just kind of left us as consumers feeling a little bit cold. I applaud them for actually being open and honest because we know the true SPF values of these. Whilst it won't reverse the clock and it won't actually repair anything that we've done in the past, at least we know the truth about what we were using on our skin, and that can give some comfort to some people, but also can allow people to address any concerns that they might have. I am thoroughly disappointed. I mean, I think at this point we're not actually surprised by this, and I think that's shocking in itself. The fact that such low test values were released and we're not actually that shocked is shocking in itself, because as an industry, I think the Korean regulators have just failed us as a consumer and a lot of the brands. The reason this is allowed to take place is because there's a loophole in the Korean sunscreen industry which allows regulators have allowed brands to almost match products. So if your product is pretty similar or a very close match to an existing product that's on the market, you can launch it without needing to do a full suite of testing. This is explained a little bit more in the full statement issued by Klairs, which I will leave a link to below if you do want to read it in full. What they say is they took a product which was already available on the market. They took the ingredients used in that product and they just tweaked them. They changed them slightly to deliver the UV watery essence. They said that that is the reason those small tweaks actually had a bigger impact than they envisaged, and that's what created the disparity between the SPF 50 they were trying to match and the SPF 18 on average that they actually delivered. I think this is rot, if I'm honest. I think this is total rot. There is no way, if you're doing minor tweaks, as they say, that it can have such a wide impact. Now, I think some of it might be down to the fact that the matched product or the product they were trying to match never actually had an SPF of 50 plus in the first place. When you're not testing all your products and putting them through this due diligence, that's bound to happen. So that could be part of the issue. But also, small tweaks and changes don't result in such a big shift unless you're changing the UV filters used. If you are, then I think it's just good business practice that you would do a whole suite of testing to make sure that you're actually living up to the claims that you make. There's also in this statement just a little bit pervading through all of it, kind of shifting the blame onto the consumer. So they mention how the way that we apply sunscreen is really important. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I actually did a whole video on how to apply your sunscreen like a pro, which I'll leave a link to up there if you're still unsure how to get the best application. It's absolutely the case that we need to apply our sunscreens properly, but none of this is our fault as consumers. In fact, the fact that we were applying a substandard product to start with is the issue. It didn't matter how we applied it. We could have applied it to perfection and we would still have been using a substandard product and not getting the SPF protection we expected. Dear Klairs have actually already issued a refund for all of these products that were bought direct from them, but this wasn't available to people that bought through a third-party supplier because officially they never actually acknowledged there was a problem with the product. Because they've come out and said, okay, there is definitely a problem with the product and what we were selling, I believe this will then open up to refunds for third-party suppliers, which is great for people like us here in the UK. Often we purchase our Korean skincare through third-party retailers, and so this is a great opportunity for people to get a refund if they weren't previously eligible for one. They've reopened the whole refund window and we'll be offering refunds for anyone that wants one. I'm going to take a little bit of a look of the terms and conditions and do a bit of a deep dive into that, because I always say a refund is only as good as the terms and conditions which are attached to it. But I would encourage, I'm going to leave a link to the refund below, so I would encourage everyone to explore that if they still have product which they want to get a refund for. I think when it comes to sunscreen, there is no more important part of your skincare routine, and it's really important we have full faith and confidence in the products that we use. So I would encourage anyone to get a refund on this product if you still have any left, because you can then use that money to then reinvest in products which are tried, tested, verified, and you can use with confidence. I don't want to take, in terms of where my perspective on Klairs goes from here, I actually don't want to take part in the whole cancel thing. I think we're all, because this is still a shocking set of results, we all kind of feel the worst and we almost have the most extreme reaction. I've been totally guilty of this in the past, and this was my reaction to Purito when I first heard of their sunscreen testing, I was like, never going to use the brand again, don't want to know. And then I looked and reflected and thought, actually, part of what they've done to rectify this should be taken into account. And this is my kind of my same theory with Klairs. I would totally understand if people don't want to use Klairs anymore and want to move away from the brand. You know, there are so many people out there that rely on their SPF for their daily sun protection. This can have an impact on people's health, on their well-being. I think all of that has to be taken into account. I am not here in this video to say you should or shouldn't support Klairs. I'm going to give my perspective, but I always encourage people to share their own thoughts and feelings in the comments below, because I'm not here to be a gatekeeper of people's feelings. You know, people should apply their own lifestyles, their own decisions, and their own ethical considerations before they buy from any brand, Klairs included. So I'd love to know your thoughts and feelings, so please leave them in the comments below. I've never been a full fangirl for Klairs. I've used some of their products successfully in the past. I actually did like the texture of the UV watery essence. However, I've never been like one of those ride or die fans when it came to Klairs. In terms of their future launches, I will of course be looking at their future launches. I will be using them in my skincare routine if they work for my personal skin type and, you know, if I enjoy the products. However, this, as with a lot of the other Korean sunscreen brands, has left me feeling a little bit cold towards the brand. I will totally appreciate that a lot of people might want to take a whole pause from Klairs and not actually review them and not actually use them in their own skincare routine. I totally get that. I don't think I'm going to be, you know, racing out first in line for future Klairs launches, but I will, if the product appeals to me, continue to use them. Hopefully this has kind of shed a little bit of perspective on everything, and I do hope that in all of this whole saga, some positive is taken from it. And Klairs, like a lot of other Korean sunscreen brands, have said when they reintroduce any sunscreen products to the market, they'll do so with full verified testing results, which will be open to us, the consumer, to review. I think this is a huge step forward, and whilst I wish none of this had ever happened, particularly because it does impact so heavily on people's health and well-being, I do think that we should always look to take the positives out of it. And if the positives are tighter regulations, better protection for consumers, particularly the Korean consumers, which don't always have as wide a variety as maybe we do here in the West, where we can reach for, you know, European sunscreens or American sunscreens. You know, a lot of these products were the day in, day out products that Korean people used. And so for that perspective, I'm so glad that some of the regulations will be tightened up and we'll have more testing. I wish none of this had happened, obviously, but if we can take the positive out there that brands will, as standard, release their testing when they release a new sunscreen product, something we saw with the recent relaunches from Make Prem, I think this has to be a good thing. Anyway, guys, that's me off my soapbox. That's enough for me for today. I want to know what your thoughts and feelings are, so please leave them in the comments below. Wherever you are in the world, guys, stay safe, stay well, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care. Bye.